Thank you for taking part in this effort to create a dialogue between designers and manufacturers. What I'd like to do is go around the screen and quickly tell us your name, your title, and your company.
Hi, I'm Natalie Jones, Director of Marketing for Shaw Contract.
I'm Mavis Wiggins. I'm a managing executive with TPG Architecture and the creative director there as well.
I'm Joe Connell. I'm design principal at Perkins and Will in Chicago, focused on workplace.
Lou Epstein. I'm general manager of Coalesse, Turnstone, and most recently also overseeing Steelcase partners, all Steelcase brands.
Hi, Principal and Director of Design Interiors for HOK's New York and LA offices. Recent transplant to LA. My focus is commercial interiors inclusive of workplace, hospitality, and base building interface work.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Lyons. I'm the president of Designtex. Nice to see you all.
Hi, Susan.
Good to see you.
Let's start with the first question. What is your team learning that will change how you do business in the future? And in what ways do you think this experience has strengthened your team?
I think we've learned so much in the last 2.5, 3 weeks, working remotely. And I think the takeaway is we realize how much we rely on each other immensely, through communication and collaboration. While the work is getting done remotely with robust tech platforms, and we're really pumping it out somehow, we really miss the physical connectivity, and sometimes, the nuance gets lost. And so we're learning how to be a little bit more connected. We try to check in every day with a Zoom meeting where we can see each other and try to stay connected and have conversations about things, not just work, but life.
One of the things that's interesting is when we think about video, which has been around for such a long time, we often think about, is it to supplement our face-to-face conversations, or is it to supplant them entirely? And you've got the two different extremes, but I think what this experience shows us is when you have no choice, when it's the only means of connecting, though we all prefer to be in the same space together, we just can't right now. And so what is this teaching us? It's teaching us to do as best we can to replicate the things that we do in real time when we're in the same room together. A daily stand-up meeting, as was mentioned. Social connections in a new way. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, coffee breaks, tea times are showing up on screen. And so we're finding that this social connection, which will never go away, it's how we're wired, is finding a different medium here through video. I too would much prefer for the world to become what it was, where we didn't have the obstacles that we're facing right now to separate us. But I think what we're learning is that if this has to be our go-to, were this situation to come up again, we're learning new protocols, new ways to stay connected. And I think that's a positive learning for us all.
I love your answers, by the way. I think the first thing we've learned in 3 weeks is that the stress level of our staff across the nation is really quite high, and that the working with technology and virtually for so many more hours per day, even than the most technologically able and agile of teams that were work sharing, has side effects. And people are asking HOK, our staff, what we can do to help. And wouldn't it be easier if we were to provide them with a virtual wellness program that they could tap into, instead of having to log into everything else that they do by choice? Because a lot of what we're asking them to do to get work done and remain gainfully employed is not by choice. So there's a setup there. There's a interdependency that comes up in conversations about what more can HOK as an organization do for its staff during this time, while we're asking them to go the extra mile, because the extra mile as an average across our organization is a 15-hour workday right now. And while technology aids it, the thing that you have to do with technology is track, prep, and follow up almost 100% more than you did previously. So that's the first kind of cultural assessment that we have been talking about. And I think the second thing is 72 inches is never going to look the same again, regardless of whether it's next month or it's 2 to 3 years down the road and we are outside the virus, and we may even be in a world where the virus won't return. But we don't know if there'll be another virus that comes up in the future. I just think that the conversations we're having with some of our clients about, am I going to be placing benching and collaborative settings 8 foot and 10 foot on centers? because we need to observe social distancing for the rest of our lives. And therefore, certain densities are no longer going to be acceptable, even if the virus goes away. Secondarily, our hospitality clients are looking at what's the impact upon revenue assessments and revenue models when bar stools, dining tables, booths, and chairs all have to go 6 feet apart. Our hospitality clients that are building hotel suites in under 300 plannable square feet know that the beds have got to get farther apart. Even if you're quarantined with someone, you're still maintaining to some degree a certain amount of distance. We've been talking a lot about caring and demonstrating a much greater level of care for our clients in our tone, in our communication, in our articulation, and not pushing them so hard to move ahead with work from a business development standpoint, but to spend more time assessing where their head is at and how they feel about things. And we find, while we're good bedside manner advisors, perhaps we're not as skilled and trained in the best of those critical conversations.
We, in our firm and Perkins and Will, but certainly I think as an industry should be somewhat emboldened that we can be more effective in societal change and accommodating these kinds of changes. I mean, we have been preaching for a long time that the concept of mobility and remote work is actually part of a resilient organization. Most of the people on this screen have remote workers and remote programs and the IT and support and the empathy that goes along with those. But mobility is resilience. And for resilience, for resilient companies and resilient organizations and communities, this is part of that system. That's part of the system for whether it's a rising tide or temperature extremes or shortages or fires or outages or civil unrest. Or being able to work elsewhere means you can support clients and each other remotely too. The biggest wellness issue that we face is IT. IT is a wellness issue. You know, if you are not supported, if you feel lonely, if it will not download, if it will not sync, you have a wellness problem. They are all related. It's a system.
I find this working remotely all the time, which I thought I was really going to hate, in a way has been refreshing on one side, and that the ability to focus more, I think, is also a wellness issue. There is something nice about being able to really be in your space and really thinking more deeply and critically maybe about the future, or the things that we don't often have the luxury to do all the time because we're all busy and we're in meetings and we're doing this and doing that. So it's been interesting sort of seeing the balance between that, liking that, and then also missing my team and missing the direct interaction. And also because we all work with materials and things, you know, we're all really, really missing that experience of being able to see something up close and really respond to it together in a way.
What are the biggest challenges you face to keep current projects going?
The obstacles that we're facing are things beyond our control, like building departments and getting inspections and building permits, or labor unions deciding that they don't want to walk onto a construction site. It's a weak chain issue, right? So if there's a break in the link, if we can't get in, there's some communities in California where the inspectors are not allowed to go out.
Yeah.
There's some labor unions in the Boston area that won't work. We can't get submittals, so we can't sign off on something. Some people are claiming force majeure. It's beyond, it's an act of God's. In other words, not a claimable delay. So those are things outside of our project control that are challenges for implementation. But for getting decisions made, I have to say I'm pretty impressed by what the last month has taught us all.
Construction sites outside of New York and here in Los Angeles, they're still full-blown and moving ahead, right? Both union and non-union. We've got, to a lesser degree in New York, the significant change we've seen in work that is moving forward, particularly in commercial interiors. We're having scale, scope, and cut back. We just had something happen in New York on a headquarters project in Hudson Yards that we had not anticipated, and came out of a group call that we jumped on with the client and the contractor last week, which was the construction site was shut down. But the client said, going forward, no one knowing when we're going to be able to resume construction, what can you do to be more nimble and ready, contractor and HOK? And we said, well, if we kind of accelerated and took care of all of the submittals, what was originally a 20-week submittal period, and kind of SWOT attacked it, the window could be shorter. The fee wouldn't necessarily be less, it would actually be more. Well, we went forward with that. And so we're now doing 10 weeks of CA We've got an ad service by the client approved to add 5 more people to the team for a 6-week window in addition to the team that's in place. I will tell you that it allowed us to keep a few more people employed and off the furlough and staff reduction list.
When the processes are disrupted by unprecedented variability, we're vulnerable to the different states' mandates, who's working, who's closed down, et cetera, et cetera. So even if we were able to produce as if all of our factories were still open and fully occupied and ready to execute, it's entirely reliant on materials coming in. And it's also reliant on sites being open to receive our goods. And everything in between, from the very beginning to the very end, has become variable. And as a result, truly challenging to navigate. So we complete what we can, we press pause on the rest. And then in terms of new projects that have had to pause, we shift our time to the things that we can do to remain busy and productive. So as we all know on this call, you can ideate at essentially low cost and on scraps of paper in foam core, on computer, obviously. You can take those to a variety of engineering studies that at least give you a sense of plausibility that prior to building prototypes and running them through test labs, directionally, they're on the right path. And so those are some of the things that we're doing in this moment where everybody needs to be, I heard the word resilient. Absolutely. This is a test to our resilience in all of our organizations. And I think we are learning good things from that test.
It's resilience and innovation. And it's interesting how, I mean, I think at TPG, and I'm sure we're all going through this, certain projects have gone on hold, but other ones are going on. And furniture has been an interesting sort of aspect of all of this as well, because we're not able to take our clients out on furniture tours and things like that. So we've had to come up with furniture tours and really rely on the manufacturers to help us through that process, and so that the work can continue. And sure, we can take it up to a point where, you know, you can even get to a bidding process, but you don't have to really place the order sight unseen or not test it out until it becomes time to do that, until things are relaxed a little bit more. So we've been also taking not only construction to a point as far as we can and then shelving it, but we're also taking our furniture packages as well. So we figured it, you just figure out a way to keep going, right? Keep the process moving as far as you can until it stops.
What behavioral or cultural impact might this global pandemic have on what our customers and clients want or expect from designers and manufacturers in the years to come?
The whole model starts to feel like it needs to be different, right? In terms of how people, what kinds of spaces people are going to feel comfortable working in, what kinds of materials people are going to feel can augment that experience, perhaps. It's hard to say at this moment, you know, 3 or 4 weeks into this, when we're all just scrambling around trying to get our heads straight on what's happening today. But I do think the whole notion of wellness is, while it's already important today, but how spaces and materials can help with that, but more about physical proximity is to me one of the things that really starts to become a huge question. It's funny, we moved into a new office about a month ago, and or 2 months ago, I guess, and then of course right now it's sitting empty, but I go in every now and then to water the plants. And the other day, I actually measured the space between the chairs for everybody. And fortunately, they were 6.5 feet apart. Yeah. So, you know, it's like those things that you never would think of before. And all of a sudden it becomes a huge issue.
We have clients, we're in a DD phase with a client through a DD phase, getting ready to move into CDs. And they're starting to question whether or not they should be building a fitness center at this time, or should they be having a communal cafe? You know, should we make sure instead of the 5-foot desk we have planned, should we go to 6 feet? And what kinds of screens are there available to get set boundaries between people? They're all like really, really smart and, you know, relevant issues that are starting to come up. And it is going to affect how we plan and, what the future looks like in the workplace. I'm sure of it.
The reality is that work is getting done remotely. How does that affect real estate needs? Smaller spaces designed around co-working and collaboration when teams seek personal interaction, or will more real estate be acquired as more enclosed workspaces are desired?
Frankly, how do we maintain and build on or even establish new working relationships in our industry if we never have face time beyond this screen? Truth is, we're human and we're humanistic, which means touch and means face time, and we feed off of each other. So we're going to have these strange behaviors for a while, but I do think that while we can get some work done, it's going to be harder getting work, and I think it's going to be harder getting people to be all on the same page when we are not elbow to elbow. And that to me is sort of the rock in the road in front of us.
We had a little mini charrette competition in the LA office last week. It was meant to be an optimistic ask, and on the Wednesday team meeting, we asked everybody to submit by end of day Thursday images of what they thought the in-person client meeting of the future looked like. And mine was a photo of a group of astronauts from 1967, all in their suits and helmets, getting ready to board one of the test pilot shuttles, because they were physically proximate, but they were completely encapsulated. And I think that's an extreme point of view, but as a group of people on some kind of mission, they looked kind of excited and happy despite the enclosures and the helmets.
If you can work anywhere, then why do we need offices, right? That's really the question is, or any workplaces or any place. Well, we can pray anywhere, but why do we go to, right? If we can pray anywhere, why do you go to church or synagogue or any house of worship? It's for connection. It's to be with people. At either a sacred place or with a community. That is what being human and humanistic is. That will not change. How we get there is the challenge of our industry and challenge of our time. I think right now, even introverts that are loving this moment right now still need connection. They can collaborate better sometimes, but even they need connections sometimes. So I think the frequency and how we learn to communicate and collaborate, I think, is going to be a challenge until that vaccine is there, where we can shake hands again. But the readiness, sort of pandemic readiness, is going to be the new resilience. That'll be the alternative to lead is going to be pandemic readiness, right?
But you still long for that gathering space where you all get together at some point, and you really need that face-to-face. There's so much that you lose through technology. You miss that human contact, and maybe that means that the workplace becomes more of a gathering space for when those teams need to get together. And you still continue to work remotely. You have those regular intervals where you get together, and obviously that would require probably less real estate. So all of those things are going to be available to discuss.
Our team is working really well together remotely, and I think the sense of connectivity and empathy has been inspiring, but you still miss those spontaneous encounters where you have the opportunity to say, oh, I'm so glad I just happened to run into you. I've been meaning to get with you on this, or hey, I have this idea. Can you sit down and brainstorm with me for 5 minutes? And those spontaneous interactions, very difficult to do virtually, and to have that serendipitous meeting.
It takes longer too to communicate this way than we're in the room together. So
Material health and infection control has been a constant focus in healthcare. In what ways are you looking to bring these qualities along with meeting performance, aesthetics, and sustainability considerations into the workplace? And how would you change your conversation with your client about improving material health?
Connect to something Joe mentioned about pandemic readiness and the reference to lead. It's not clear to me what the other side of this is going to look like, as I'm sure it's not clear to anyone on the call. But we're in a hyper-reactive mode right now. Everyone is responding as best they can in real time, while also trying to imagine what the future is going to bring. And One of the things that I think we might want to think about is whether it's our homes, social spaces, or I should say shared workspaces like WeWork, or our own individual headquarters or distributed businesses. There's going to have to be something that confirms for us that the spaces are clean. That sense of safety has been shaken. So the only likeness to that sense of safety being shaken in our relative lifetime, I would say, is 9/11, which gave way to entirely new security systems in airports around the world. It happened here, but the net effect was global, and it's changed our travel experience. And I think of this as a different kind of safety moment. It's our health safety, and everyone is wondering, is 6 feet enough? Who would know? How is it measured? Are these materials clean? What box did it come in? And how many people touched the contents before it got in the box? And the list just goes on and on. We've become hypersensitive to what is a healthy and clean environment in a way that is truly unprecedented. And we might imagine a set of new protocols, a set of new standards, something which is like LEED, which becomes certified in some way, that is the good housekeeping seal for our homes and for shared workspaces and for our corporate headquarters, let's say. Because without that, it's a guessing game. It's a he said this, she said that, but who truly knows?
About the amount of product that's now got to be clinically shrink wrapped, or when a white glove delivery service also has to provide an ability to wipe things down that are visibly watched and observed by the consumer as this product is being staged and installed. I mean, the impact of such little 5-minute moments is huge.
We've got the issue of we think about our spacing and proximity distancing in our workplace, but that's the end state, that's the destination. How did you get there? You know, when you touch the spigot on the coffee pot, well, that's been touched by everyone else. You know, the copier, that button has been touched by everyone else. The level in the door handle, the elevator button, the handle on your Uber. And so I think same thing, Louis, like, is there a good housekeeping seal on your Uber, on your taxi cab?
Yeah.
I even worry if subways and buses can't have that kind of seal of approval, are we suddenly going to see busier roadways with single occupants cars again
Right.
to get to work? And then it's going to be much more hassle prone to get to work, so you're not going to go to work as much. There's going to be more remote work. That to me is a central issue for confidence and the ability to focus and just the ability to move forward.
Self-cleaning materials has been kind of the holy grail in our world for a long time, and nobody's figured it out yet, but it would now become a critical project. And having been involved a lot, as probably all of you have too, with healthcare projects, the whole notion of the tension between keeping materials clean and then the materials used to clean materials is really a terrible thing, because disinfection just trashes everything that it touches. And now we're going into a world where everyone is going to be desperately wanting to know that everything they're about to touch has been seriously disinfected some way or another. So and again, going back to that notion that, these kind of calamities often spark innovation, maybe that ends up happening where, chemical companies actually are partnering more directly with materials manufacturers so that those materials can be co-developed in a way that allows for the efficacy and that you want, but doesn't basically have something fall to shreds within 6 months or a year of its use. So that could be a good outcome of all of this.
Susan, are we so far away from textiles that when certain germs, bacteria and floating viruses that are airborne hit it, that they don't have the ability to kill that kind of stuff, but not kill us when we come into contact with it and against it?
There's not a great solution at the moment. I mean, we were working with a company called Sharklet that actually used the side of a shark skin to work on basically automatically killing microbes through structure. So it's like a cool biomimetic idea. And that product is out there, but so expensive that, difficult to commercialize. So, things like that, all the things we care about now, to Lou's point about 9/11 changing everything, the things we care about now are going to shift. And so as the things we care about shift, then costs begin to become less of an issue, perhaps in certain areas. So it could be an interesting moment for, that kind of innovation coming to the fore.
There's a lot of research still needed in this area. And there's been this conflict, as you said, there's this conflict for a long, long time about the material versus the cleaning, about durability versus disposability, antimicrobial versus, is as an antimicrobial at one hand also a micro pesticide. So is there a material health versus an antiviral or antibacteria issue? So more science is needed in that area for sure. And maybe some new, there's in air systems are working on much more infrared systems for cleaning. So is there a cleaning mode that comes from lighting, for instance, or ultrasonics? Is there new ways for us to think about how to get places more sanitized? And Beth, you've talked a little bit about do aesthetics evolve because of this? And I think they do. I think the perception or the comfort people are going to have with, is this place sanitized, is going to change. Does it look like it's clean? If you see a very clean kitchen, you have more confidence that the food is going to be good, right? If you don't see the kitchen, or you see an ugly, maybe disheveled kitchen that looks dirty, you're not so confident in the food. I think the same could be true of any in places that we go to. So I do think aesthetics are going to evolve and should. That rough sawn wood that Instagram loves so much is we know that can't be sanitized. That is going to suddenly look like pre-COVID design move that will have no future. As a silly example, but an example.
It's going to be interesting also to see if there's any additions or robust sort of solutions.
Yeah, it probably will be a reordering of priorities, right? So,
yeah.
In aesthetics it'll be interesting to see how that changes or evolves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what about the basic makeup, composition, and structure of materials as we know them today? How many of these materials will not be able to withstand whatever the future level of cleanliness requirement and regular maintenance is? And will maintenance impact the lifetime of a material differently after the virus than before the virus? That's what I wonder about.
Mm-hmm.
I remember a couple of years ago talking to an infection control professional at one of the big hospital systems in the Midwest, and she said, if I could only have concrete benches in my spaces, that's what I would choose. She said, but the designers of my spaces won't go for that. So she said, I very grudgingly have to let them have other materials. It's just really limiting in terms of what really works today.
How should designers and manufacturers communicate with each other going forward?
Manufacturers have always solicited input from the A&D community, which is great. I think there'll be a lot more back and forth now. With the A&D community also going to manufacturers with ideas about how to innovate or improve, product lines or with ideas. So I'm hoping that it's going to be even more of a collaborative.
Optimistic about the innovation that's going to come out of this, as well as the connectivity. I think we'll all come out of it with a higher level of focus on human kindness. And I think that I've learned, or not learned, but it has been reinforced, is that we really are a global community, and just that recognition of how connected we are as a global community. Our team in China went through this earlier than we did, and they've been so helpful and giving and sharing what they went through and the lessons that they learned. And so that's just been a fantastic thing for our team to be even more connected in that way.
I love seeing all your faces, I have to say. Thank you all for doing this.
Thank you for pulling this
all.
together.
Good to see you all.
It's really great to talk to you guys.
Take care.
Talk to everybody. Take care.
Take care.
Be well.
Wash your
Bye.